One of the questions we've been seeing a lot in our Freezer Meals 101 Facebook group lately is gluten-free. Either their child has had a celiac diagnosis or they're on a gluten-free diet themselves because of health issues or choice, and they are looking for gluten-free solutions, and we've got them.
Yes, we do. There are some recipes that are naturally gluten-free, and of course those are easy to find anywhere if you know what you're looking for. And then there are some recipes that you can adapt to be gluten-free, and we will show you how to do that later on in this video.
Some recipes are very obviously gluten-free already, but people who are on this kind of diet, they miss the recipes that are a little bit more difficult to get that way. So the first recipe we're going to be sharing with you today is our Italian meatballs, because meatballs, meatloaf, hamburger, things like that often have hidden gluten or just even obvious gluten in them. And so this is a great way to still be able to enjoy those ground beef flavors, and you can then add any kind of sauce that you want onto these meatballs, provided that it's gluten-free, of course. So to make these meatballs, we're gonna combine some ground beef, ground pork, shredded mozzarella cheese, grated Parmesan, some heavy cream, eggs, tomato paste, some minced garlic. We just use garlic from the jar because it's super easy, and when you're making a lot of meals at once, it saves time. A bit of finely chopped onion, parsley, basil, salt, and pepper. The easiest way to combine your meatball mixture is actually with your hands. If you want, you can throw some gloves on for that part, or you can just get right in there. Once this is all combined, you're going to form it into meatballs. We like to use a cookie dough scoop so that they're all relatively the same size, and then we roll them out from there. You're gonna lay these on a cookie sheet and freeze them flat, and then once they're completely frozen, you're gonna transfer them into a freezer bag. Get all of the air out of your freezer bag, seal it, and put it back in the freezer. On the day that you go to cook these, you can take out as many as you need. Because you froze them flat on the cookie sheet, they won't stick together. So if you want to cook them all, you can, or you can just take out a few at a time. Then you're going to cook them either in a skillet or in the oven. You can go ahead and serve these with your favorite sauce. If you are gluten-free and you are missing spaghetti and meatballs, you can do this with a zucchini noodle, a squash noodle, or with your favorite gluten-free pasta.
A little tip for you: if you do not have a cookie scoop, you can take a 1/4 cup measuring scoop that you would use for baking and scoop that into your mixture, level it off. A 1/4 cup is 4 even tablespoons. So if you take that and split it into 2, each of your meatballs would be 2 tablespoons, and then you can still have, a uniform size. If you want them to be a little bit bigger, then you use your 1/3 cup measuring cup, but you don't need a fancy cookie scoop. We have fancy cookie scoops, but you don't need one. This next recipe is beef curry, and it is fantastic. You start out with your beef strips, where you can cut them yourself, or you can go to the meat counter at your grocery store and either have them cut, or you can find them there sometimes. We're going to add that into a large freezer bag. Along with it, we're going to add in chopped onion, red and yellow bell pepper that has been diced, a can of diced tomatoes, curry paste, a teeny tiny bit of sugar, and some heavy cream. We're gonna mix that all together right in the bag, because that is the easiest way to mix something without dirtying another dish. We're gonna take out that extra air. When it comes to freezer meals, air is what gets trapped in your bag and then allows for the frost to happen, the freezer burn to happen. So the more air you can get out, the better. We're going to seal it up and freeze it. On the day of cooking, this is a great one to throw in the slow cooker. Throw it on low for 4 to 6 hours and serve it over rice, and this is fantastic. And what's also nice about the slow cooker is that it's ready for you when you get home from work. It's something you can set it and forget it. It's an easy one.
Now, our easy chicken crock-pot cacciatore
is a mouthful.
Truly, that too. It truly doesn't get any easier than this. The beef curry might be a close second as far as easy goes, but This one is so easy, and the thing I love about it is that it doesn't taste like it's that easy. Into your large freezer bag, you're going to add some boneless, skinless chicken breasts, pasta sauce, a zucchini that's been coarsely chopped, some chopped onion, Italian seasoning, and that is it. Because you've used a jarred pasta sauce, you've taken out a whole bunch of work for yourself and made this super easy. You're going to squish that all around to combine it, remove the excess air, seal it, and freeze it. On the day you go to cook this, you thaw it and toss it into your slow cooker again. Now, the nice thing about this one is that you can serve it on your favorite gluten-free pasta, or it goes well with rice as well. So either way, you've got a full meal that's got your veggies, your protein, and your starch, and it came together in just a few minutes. When you decide or are forced to adopt a gluten-free diet, one of the things that you have to be really careful of are the hidden gluten things, like in seasoning mixes. So we use Epicure often because they don't have gluten in most of their seasoning mixes. We also have used Mrs. Dash because they don't have gluten, and we've made our own. We do have some videos, we'll pop one up there, for making some seasoning blends on your own. The nice thing about making them yourself is not only do you save money, you can control what goes in them. So you control the amount of sodium, the amount of sugar, or no sugar at all, and of course you can ensure that there's no gluten in there. So that's really nice.
The other thing you need to watch for it was a big surprise to me, was to find out that soy sauce has gluten in it. People will commonly swap out the regular soy sauce for gluten-free soy sauce, and two other common swap outs that I had never heard before until today, because Charlotte and her big brain told me, it is coconut aminos and something called tamari. And so they're gonna still give the zip that you're gonna get when you have the soy sauce, but no gluten.
Years and years ago, we put one of our sons on a gluten-free diet. I have to say, he wasn't that excited about the whole concept.
He was not, but he was a trooper. He did it.
He did sneak gluten
He
occasionally.
He did sometimes. What
I
kid isn't
learned a
gonna,
lot.
you know?
Totally. And yeah, I learned a whole lot during that time about the hidden glutens and how you have to read the labels and how it's in things you wouldn't expect, like the seasoning mixes, just even like taco seasoning can have it in there, or your packages, right? So I just learned to read labels, learned about the soy sauce substitutes. Back then I did use tamari as my sort of preferred substitute, and just had to be really careful. Even things like I hadn't thought of, because we've got a really good chicken taco soup recipe that has beer in it, and then it's like, oh yeah, beer is
A barley product.
so it's gluten.
It's got gluten in it.
You can find gluten-free beers, and they're getting easier to find. So gluten-free products in general are getting easier and easier. Things like the pastas, at first, they weren't good, but I was able to test and try different things out and find a pasta that actually we liked the texture of. And so you get to know which ones you prefer, and then you can stick with those. One super important thing to tell you about gluten-free freezer meals is that when you're making meals that call for pasta, we don't recommend that you cook the pasta, put it in the meal, and then freeze it.
If it's gluten-free.
Yes.
You can do it if it's regular pasta. The trick there, in case you're gluten whatever, if you're
gluten-full.
if you're gluten-full, the trick with cooking pasta is you want to cook it a couple of minutes under al dente, because when you go to cook it again on the day that you're eating it, it will get mushy if you've already given it the full ride. So you just want to let it cook again, but it won't get mushy. Gluten-free pasta,
No.
don't do it. Save it for the day of cooking. There's no way to save it. There's no way to undercook it. There's no way. It doesn't have the structure, right?
Yeah.
Gluten, It makes your buns soft. Gluten makes your buns soft, but it's part of the structure, right, that holds your pasta together. That, you know, and because it's missing in your gluten-free pasta, it falls apart at the best of times. In my experience, I haven't cooked with it a whole lot, and so you definitely don't want to freeze it.
Our experience with it is you're just better off to add your pasta the day of. You know, it doesn't take that long to boil your water, cook up your pasta, drain it, and mix it into your pasta freezer meal. So we recommend for gluten-free pasta only that you wait until the day of serving before you cook it up. One other tip for you before we get back into recipes is if you are gluten-free and you are struggling to find recipes, then one option is our Freezer Meals 101 Club, because in there we have these handy dandy filters.
Yes, we do.
And all you need to do is click one button and you can find all of our gluten-free recipes. And if you wanted to go further and, you know, beef was on sale and you wanted to find the gluten-free beef buttons, you would just click both those buttons and it would filter for you automatically which of those are your beef gluten-free recipes. And then you can click another button, create your meal plan, and one more button prints your shopping list, your prep list, and then you can go and print labels with cooking instructions. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of freezer cooking, but it's especially nice for those that have dietary issues because we've got those buttons like gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, low carb, whatever it is, we've got you covered. So one more tip there, Christy's going to tell you about these drumsticks that she's kind of passionate about.
Who could be passionate about a drumstick? I could. These are our honey mustard and herb drumsticks. I came upon this recipe a long time ago and I thought, you know, this could actually work as a freezer meal. I had never done it. We tried it. It works pretty well. I really like the flavor. And in fact, a few weeks ago, I had found some chicken on sale and there was chicken on the bone, like chicken thighs with the skin and everything. This is a drumstick recipe, but I like that the seasoning that comes with it so much that I made my bone in, skin on chicken thighs with this seasoning, and it is really, really great. So I'm gonna tell you the drumstick version of this recipe, and here it is. We're gonna put 12 drumsticks in your large freezer bag. We're going to add in some melted honey, some cider vinegar, some Dijon grainy mustard, some minced garlic, herb de Provence. Now, if you've never used this before, it is a very fancy herb collection. Basically, it's a herb mix, and it has lavender in it. And that's kind of why I think it's fancy, because I don't cook a lot of things that have lavender in it. And I don't like the smell of lavender, but apparently I like the taste. And a little bit of salt and pepper, and it's done. So what you will do is mix it around on your drumsticks, get it into your freezer. On the day of cooking, what I like to do is put it into like a 9x13 baking dish and cook it for 20 minutes at 400, and then I actually pull it out of the oven. Kitchen tips with Christy here. I'll put a hot pad under one end so all the juices run to this end, and then I ladle and I will baste those drumsticks again. You don't have to turn them over, you just baste them again. And then like the grainy mustard gets on, throw them back in for another 20-25 minutes. Use your meat thermometer, make sure your temp is up to, so if it's boneless chicken, it can make sure it's to 160. If it's bone in, you wanna go up a little higher, maybe 170. Some people are more comfortable with 180. Just so you know, I'm a big
meat thermometer.
I am a meat thermometer convert, and I really like mine and I appreciate it. So learn how to use your meat thermometer. You will improve your cooking skills tenfold, I promise.
Our Tex-Mex stuffed peppers are so delicious. They are easy to throw together, other than you do need to do a little bit of prep because you're gonna brown your beef first. But these are so nice to have, and they're a great way to get some veggies into your kids if you're a mom or a dad. Beforehand, you're gonna brown your ground beef. You're gonna wait for that to cool before you add it to your freezer bag, and then you're gonna add some diced onion, Minced garlic, again, we're just scooping that out from the jar. Did you know that 1 teaspoon of garlic from the jar is equivalent to 1 clove of garlic? Now, I have to admit that Christy and I heard from one of our viewers that they measure garlic with their heart, and ever since then we kind of have adopted that philosophy.
I think garlic is something you can measure with your heart. You can overdo it, but to be honest, the jarred garlic is pretty mild.
It is. It's made from the larger elephant garlic, and so it's milder than your traditional garlic that you're gonna find in your grocery store. So we do more like 1 heaping teaspoon per clove of garlic, but you know your garlic preferences, and you can do this.
You can measure with your heart too. And
you sure can.
And if it's this much, that's okay.
Totally. Then into your bag, you're going to add some frozen corn, or if you happen to have canned corn and you wanted to drain that and add that instead, that's totally okay too. Then you're gonna add some cooked rice. Again, you wanna wait for it to cool before you add it to your bag. And then you're just going to add some tomato sauce and taco seasoning. Now, again, here we wanna be really careful that we've either used a homemade taco seasoning that you're sure doesn't have gluten in it, or a store-bought one that is gluten-free. You're going to squish that all together in your freezer bag, remove the excess air again, and seal it, freeze it. On the day you go to cook this, you are going to need to purchase some extra ingredients, which is some bell peppers. I like to use kind of an assortment of colors, so you've got your red, yellow, orange. If you wanted, you can have some green ones. It's just a little rainbow. You're going to take the top off of those, scoop the insides out, give them a nice wash, and then you are going to stuff those peppers with your thawed mixture, and you're going to top them with a bit of either jalapeno jack or cheddar cheese and bake them in the oven so that the peppers soften a little bit, the flavors meld together a little more, and your cheese melts. So really, these are totally cooked and dinner is on the table in 35 to 40 minutes. This one, you don't need anything else with it. You've got your full meal right all here. I'm gonna give you a few ideas for this mixture in case you're like me and you sometimes forget to go to the grocery store, because when your freezer is full of meals,
you don't go as often.
Go very
You really
often.
don't.
And so if you don't have peppers and you really have a craving for this Tex-Mex stuffed peppers, then there are a few other ways that you can eat this. But the simplest way, honestly, is just to throw this entire thing into a skillet, top it with cheese, and it's a full meal too.
We have done that probably more than we've actually got it into the peppers, because that's exactly it. I pull it out, the label is right on there. It says, load this into the peppers and then bake in your oven. And I'm like, I don't have peppers, but it's a thin bag and I need to defrost it fast. So we're having this tonight without the peppers. And that's okay. So then,
Totally.
Do you know what else this would be good in though? I was just thinking, because that isn't where I thought you were going with it. I thought you were going to list all the other vegetables that you could put this in.
Well, zucchini.
Zucchini. You could
Totally.
hollow out a
Yeah.
long zucchini and make a zucchini boat of this.
Amazing.
It would be
zucchini.
really, really good.
And this is kind of the time of year where all your neighbors are saying, hey, I've got extra garden zucchini, you want some? I've actually, the neighbor, for those that don't know, Christy is my neighbor 2 doors that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been freezer cooking together for over 11 years, and it's been amazing and awesome. But my neighbor 1 door that way, so just right next door.
It's her
she
first
offered-
garden this
yes,
year.
and
Oh, good.
It was prolific. It went really
It
well.
went really well. She
Yeah.
did a great job. I was admiring her garden from walks through her fence. She didn't offer me any zucchini. She probably has some to spare. Did I ever tell you about the time that I had all this extra zucchini? I'd probably given away all I could. So I put it in a box at the mailbox. Like, we have a mailbox that comes into our subdivision because we're rural. A community mailbox. So I put my box of zucchini out by there and said, free zucchini. Actually, I didn't. I said, don't you wish your neighbor had free zucchini for you? Well, they do. So I had put it out there, and my husband came home and he said, honey, I got a box of zucchini for us. He didn't. He saw it and he knew it was my zucchini. He was just pulling my leg. But it was a good one on me. Like, it was pretty funny.
That's really funny. It would have been funnier if he actually brought it home.
This next recipe is Spanish rice. We have been making this recipe for a long time. And it is one of our favorites. It is really, really tasty. And it's because we often use it with our red sauce when we make it.
Yeah, it's so good.
It is so good. And the red sauce recipe is in the club, if you didn't know.
It's gluten-free, also.
It is gluten-free. And so what is also nice about this recipe is it has some common ingredients of what we've already talked about in other recipes today. So we're already browning the ground beef for the stuffed peppers. You just add a little more and then you have some for your Spanish rice. You're gonna cook rice for your peppers. This also calls for rice. The other thing is onions. If you're gonna chop one onion, chop 4 onions and just spread them around and make a bunch of meals. Because that way you're still just using your chopping board one time, you're using your knife one time, it's less dishes, those meals are ready. So if you can look at your recipes a little bit, plan ahead, and then your freezer meal experience will be just that much more productive, or, you know.
Yeah, when you pick recipes that have common ingredients, it cuts your time a lot, but it also cuts the money.
And
because you can buy in bulk, you can take advantage of sales, all that stuff.
And if you choose well, you will still have a tremendous amount of variety. You know, like there's rice, ground beef, and onions that can go a million different directions. So here's another direction. With our ground beef in the bag, we're going to, because we've already cooked it, and we're going to add in our minced garlic, again from our jar, our pasta sauce or our red sauce that we like to use, our cooked rice, some diced onion, some diced peppers, some black olives that are sliced and then they've been pitted. So we like to use the little can. Now it only calls for half a can. So if you double this, you can use the whole can, right? We're making double. You're gonna do the work, you might as well double it. And then in a separate bag, we're going to add some shredded cheese. So you can shred your cheese already or you can buy shredded cheese. We're gonna get all the air out of our bags, seal them up, and then we're gonna staple them together. Make sure that you staple them above the seal, otherwise you'll have a hole in your bag and then you'll be leaky when you go to defrost this. And then on the day that you do cook this, you wanna thaw it, put it in a casserole dish, top it with your cheese, and it just goes in the oven. And seriously, 30 to 40 minutes, this is done. It is a full meal. It is delicious, and the olives really do it for me. Like, for me, it's the olives that make this dish so exciting. But my kids will eat it, even though my daughter will eat anything. My son, if you've been watching for a while, he's a picky one.
He's a little picky.
He's a little picky, but he'll, you know, he might pick the olives out and the green pepper and maybe the onion. I have to tell you something. Maybe I told you already.
That he ate corn on the cob?
He ate corn on the cob. Oh my goodness. He was visiting a friend and they had corn on the cob for supper, and the mom texts me and she said, I think we peer pressured your son into eating corn on the cob. And I'm like, peer pressured? Because they were all eating it and they were all enjoying it and it's dripping in the butter and the salt, and he watched this happen. And it's like, he doesn't ever notice when we do it at home and how delicious it is. But do you know what she had? She had those little picks that go in the end of the corn cobs.
That's what you've been missing all these years.
That's what I've been missing all these years. I'm like, we don't need that. I guess I need to go get some of those and he'll eat the corn on the cob. He's like, maybe I just don't like it when it's in something. That's what he decided after all that.
Oh my goodness.
I think we have a corn lover now on our hands, which makes me pretty happy.
It's going to be easier for you to convince him to try recipes that have corn in them.
He has another friend's house. He'll eat spinach there. He won't eat spinach at my house. He's being polite, right? He doesn't need to be polite with mom. Anyway.
So the moral of the story is he just needs to go and eat at other people's houses. And then he would eat all the healthy foods.
He would.
So we have another tip that, especially if you're newer to a gluten-free lifestyle, you might not be aware of. And that is that sometimes you are able to buy things like mixes, whether it's seasoning mixes or other types of mixes, in a bulk store or in the grocery bulk section that are gluten-free. And we've discovered that we can buy a gluten-free dry onion soup mix, and we have a number of recipes that call for dry onion soup mix. And so being able to have a gluten-free version of that, we also can get an MSG-free version of that, which we really appreciate. So if you seek those out, that is something to know. And the other thing is that dry ranch seasoning, which also tends to be in some recipes, not a lot, but you know, here and there we've got it. And it's in yummy things like the buffalo chicken dip and things like that. That is gluten-free. So it is just, most of the brands make it gluten-free, and when you buy it in the bulk section, it is already gluten-free. So go ahead and go hog wild on the dry ranch seasoning.
That is awesome. Everybody needs more dry ranch seasoning in their life.
This tandoori chicken is really flavorful. It's a bit of a newer recipe to us, like probably in the last year. We're constantly trying new recipes and tweaking them and getting them so that they're good enough to share with you. And this one, we found the magic here.
We found the magic.
It's very good.
Really delicious.
So into your large freezer bag, you're going to add some boneless, skinless chicken thighs. You could do this with breasts, but honestly, we've found that in this recipe in particular, the thighs just keep it nice and juicy, and you're gonna wanna try the thighs. Then some plain yogurt, lemon juice, olive oil, paprika, ginger that's grated or minced. Now we like to use the squeezy tube ginger because it is super fast and it still tastes nice and fresh. You can find the squeezy tubes over in the produce section of your grocery store. They're usually by the bagged salads.
Unless your grocery store is out and then you have to get your daughter to run over to Charlotte's house and borrow your squeezy tube ginger because you're trying to make some paneer vindaloo so your kid can go camping.
And that happened yesterday.
And that happened yesterday, which is why I bring it up.
But Christy knows that I always have squeezy tube ginger in my fridge.
And I usually do too. And it was, but I don't use it as often because we always do freezer meals at your house. So my little tube maybe sometimes expires and I have to toss it. So I did. It was on my list to buy a new one. And I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm not going to go to another store. I'll just have to shop at Charlotte's house.
We have shopped at each other's house more than one time. As a matter of fact, it's at least a weekly occurrence.
That's what good neighbors are for, right?
Totally. Okay, then you're gonna add some salt. Did I say garlic? I don't think I did. You're gonna add some garlic again, just from that jar, some salt, curry powder, and either ground chili or chili powder. You're gonna kind of massage it to coat those chicken thighs, and then you're gonna get as much air as you can out of the bag, seal it, and freeze it. When you take this out to thaw, you're gonna make sure that you let the chicken marinate for quite a few hours as it thaws, and then you're going to cook this on the barbecue. You could also cook it in the oven or a skillet if you prefer.
It does shine on the barbecue. It is good.
It is good.
Yeah.
It's nice and flavorful, and of course you can serve this with rice. If you want to get really fancy, you could put some fresh cilantro on top.
Yes, you could.
And I like to serve this with just some heated up frozen peas. That's it. So you got your rice, and if you're really in a hurry, you could do minute rice. So this can come together very, very quickly because chicken cooks pretty fast on the barbecue.
Yes, it does.
I hope that these recipes have helped you to see that being gluten-free or having a child that needs to be gluten-free does not need to be so overwhelming. And if you can get your meals all prepared on a weekend afternoon, then you've got meals for a week or two, and you don't have to think about dinner again. So I know it can be scary and hard to start on this gluten-free journey, but it really doesn't have to be as overwhelming as you might be feeling right now.
And I will say, because I've never had to cook gluten-free on a regular basis, One time my auntie came to visit. She had been staying with family, and I said, what would you like for supper? She goes, well, it has to be gluten-free, but I'm so sick of rice and I'm so sick of salad. What do you have? And I'm like, Auntie, we can cook you potatoes. And she said, potatoes sound so good right now. So I had garden potatoes, or they could have been pantry potatoes. It doesn't matter. You know, potatoes are a terrific starch. There is nutrients in them. There's a million ways you can prepare potatoes. They are gluten-free and they are good for you. So, you know, you aren't just limited to rice or doing spaghetti squash, you know, or gluten-free pasta. There are other options out there, and if you look hard or think about it, it's all there for you. And I made those drumsticks that same day that I really, really love. And I think just some steamed cauliflower. And she was just so grateful that it wasn't rice or salad.
Yeah, I think it is getting easier now because there are more options in your grocery store. There are more companies that are specializing and that actually have products that taste good, especially
in
when
the
it comes to
beginning,
baking.
They weren't always.
Things. Yeah,
No.
totally. So I think people who are diagnosed with celiac nowadays have it a lot easier than people 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's still a bit of a learning curve, and it's still difficult at first. So hopefully these things help you out and you can get your freezer stacked so you can relax.